Dr. Minho Park had been working on the research ship Celestial Dawn for 2 years, but he had never seen anything like this before. The blue light from the holographic display made his face glow as strange patterns moved across the screen. These weren't normal space signals. These were something much more dangerous. The patterns looked like waves of light dancing together, creating shapes that seemed to move in and out of reality. They pulsed with a rhythm that felt almost alive, like a heartbeat from somewhere far away in the darkness of space. Minho couldn't look away. There was something beautiful about these signals, even though everyone else on the ship was terrified of them. Just minutes before, the bridge had been full of alien crew members. There was Zeph, the tall Altarian scout with silver skin who could see in complete darkness. Next to him stood Ambassador Vix, a Vegan diplomat whose 4 arms could work on different tasks at the same time. They were tough beings who had survived wars and explored dangerous worlds across the galaxy. But when the computer started playing these mysterious signals, everything changed. Zeph began shaking uncontrollably, his silver skin turning pale. His large black eyes rolled back and he started making sounds that weren't words. Ambassador Vix tried to help him, but then she started screaming. Her 4 arms grabbed her head as if something was trying to tear her mind apart. Other crew members began falling to their knees. Some started crying. Others just stared at nothing, with empty eyes. Within seconds, beings who had faced the worst dangers in space were running away like frightened children. The automatic doors slammed shut as they escaped to safer parts of the ship. Now Minho stood alone in the bridge, still, watching the patterns. He felt Captain Ji-Young Kim's worried voice coming through the communication system. She was hiding in the command center, which was built to protect against the worst kinds of alien attacks. "Minho, you need to turn that thing off right now," she said. Her voice was shaking. "Those signals come from the Void Dancers. They're the most dangerous beings in our galaxy. Every species knows to stay away from them. One more minute of listening to their signals, and everyone on this ship will lose their minds forever." But Minho felt completely different from everyone else. While the aliens had felt terror and madness, he felt peaceful. The dancing patterns of light reminded him of music. They created beautiful shapes that seemed to tell a story. His human brain, which had developed differently from the older alien species, seemed to protect him from whatever was hurting the others. He had studied the legends of the Void Dancers during his time at the Galactic Research Academy. Every species in the galaxy feared them. They were described as beautiful but deadly beings who lived in crystal ships that floated between stars. Anyone who got too close to them would go insane. Entire space fleets had been found drifting empty, their crews driven mad by just seeing the Void Dancers from far away. But as Minho watched the signals, he began to notice something that no one had ever reported before. The patterns weren't random. They had structure like a language. The dancing lights seemed to be trying to communicate something important. There were repeating sequences that looked like mathematical formulas. Other parts reminded him of star maps he had studied. "Captain," Minho said, his voice calm and steady, "I think we've been wrong about the Void Dancers. These signals aren't trying to hurt us. They're trying to tell us something." "That's impossible," Captain Kim replied. "Every record we have shows that contact with Void Dancers leads to madness and death. The Galactic Council has banned any research into their communications for good reason." Minho touched the control panel and saved the signal data to his personal research files. "But I'm not going mad, Captain. I'm perfectly fine. Maybe humans are different. Maybe we can understand them when other species can't." The captain was quiet for a long moment. Minho could hear her breathing heavily through the communication system. Finally, she spoke again. "Run a full medical scan on yourself. Check your brain activity, your neural patterns, everything. If you show any signs of Void Dancer influence, we're destroying that data and jumping to hyperspace immediately." Minho ran the medical scanners on himself. His brainwaves were completely normal. His stress levels were actually lower than usual. Every test showed that he was perfectly healthy and sane. This had never happened before in the history of Galactic contact with the Void Dancers. As he worked, Minho kept thinking about what this could mean. Humans were still new to galactic civilization. They had only joined the Galactic Council 50 years ago. Most alien species saw humans as young and inexperienced, but maybe being young and different was exactly what was needed here. The Void Dancers had been a mystery and a threat for thousands of years. No one had ever been able to study them safely. But if humans could resist their influence, everything could change. Minho realized he might be holding the key to solving one of the galaxy's greatest mysteries. He looked at the beautiful dancing patterns one more time before turning off the display. Something told him this was just the beginning of a much bigger discovery. 3 days had passed since Minho first discovered he could watch the Void Dancer signals without losing his mind. Now he sat alone in a small shuttle, heading toward something that had never been attempted in galactic history. He was going to meet the Void Dancers face to face. The shuttle was tiny compared to the massive research ship behind him. Through the thick window, Minho could see the celestial dawn getting smaller and smaller as he flew away from safety. Captain Ji-Young Kim had agreed to this dangerous mission only after days of arguments with Galactic Command. Many officials wanted to stop the mission completely, but the possibility of finally understanding the Void Dancers was too important to ignore. Minho pressed his face against the cold window and looked ahead. What he saw took his breath away. The Void Dancer ships didn't look like any spacecraft he had ever seen. They were made of what appeared to be living crystal that sparkled with inner light. The ships moved and flowed like they were made of water instead of solid material. Some were shaped like enormous flowers, others looked like twisted trees made of pure light. The largest ship was incredible to see. It was as big as a small moon, but it seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. Parts of it would disappear and reappear, as if it was moving through space that normal beings couldn't even see. Colors that had no names flowed across its surface like liquid rainbows. Back on the celestial dawn, Soman Lee was watching every detail of Minho's condition through the medical scanners built into his spacesuit. She was the only other human on the ship, and she had volunteered to monitor the mission. All the alien crew members had been given sleeping medicine to keep them unconscious. Even being this close to Void Dancer territory was dangerous for their minds. "Minho, your heart rate is perfectly normal," Soman said through the communication system. "This is incredible." Lieutenant Korax, our Centaurian tactical officer, went into complete shock yesterday, just from looking at long-distance sensor readings of these ships. His mind couldn't handle it, and Centaurians are supposed to be one of the mentally strongest species in the galaxy. Minho checked his own feelings. He felt excited and curious, but not afraid. "I feel fine, Soman. Actually, I feel better than fine. There's something almost peaceful about being near them." As his shuttle got closer, something amazing began to happen. The crystal ships started to move in patterns around him. They weren't moving randomly. They were creating formations that looked like a carefully planned dance. The ships spun and flowed around each other in perfect harmony, their movements creating beautiful light shows in the darkness of space. Then Minho saw them. The Void Dancers themselves began to appear outside their ships, floating in the vacuum of space without any protection. They were tall, much taller than humans, and they seemed to be made of the same flowing light as their ships. Their bodies moved in ways that shouldn't be possible, bending and stretching like they were made of liquid starlight. But they weren't attacking or showing any signs of hostility. Instead, they were dancing. Their movements were graceful and welcoming, like they were performing some kind of greeting ceremony. As they moved, the space around them seemed to change colors and patterns, as if reality itself was responding to their dance. "Soman, are you seeing this?" Minho whispered into his communication device. "They're not trying to hurt me. They're welcoming me. The sensors are picking up incredible energy readings," Soman replied, her voice full of wonder. "But they're not weapon signatures. It's like they're creating art with pure energy." More Void Dancers appeared, dozens of them, all moving in the same beautiful patterns. They surrounded Minho's shuttle, but instead of feeling trapped, he felt honored. It was like being invited to watch the most beautiful performance in the universe. One of the dancers came closer to his shuttle than the others. This one seemed different, older somehow, and more complex. Its form shifted between different shapes, sometimes looking almost human, other times appearing as pure geometric patterns of light. When it moved, space itself seemed to bend around it. The dancer extended what might have been an arm toward Minho's shuttle. Where it pointed, the metal hull became transparent, allowing Minho to see the being more clearly. Its face was constantly changing, but Minho could sense intelligence and curiosity there. It was studying him just as carefully as he was studying it. They're trying to communicate, Minho realized. All these years everyone thought they were monsters trying to drive us insane. But they're just trying to talk to us. The problem is that most minds can't handle their form of communication. But you can, Soman said. Somehow your human brain can process what they're doing without breaking down. Minho felt a strange sensation in his mind, like someone was gently knocking on a door. The lead void dancer was trying to make contact with his thoughts. Instead of the violent mental intrusion that other species experienced, this felt like being offered a gift. I think they want to show me something, Minho said. Something important. He was about to become the first being in galactic history to successfully communicate with the void dancers. But he had no idea that what they wanted to tell him would change everything about how the galaxy understood itself and the dangers it faced. For hours, Minho tried everything he knew about galactic communication. He sent standard greeting protocols, mathematical formulas, even simple pictures through his shuttle's communication systems. But the void dancers didn't respond to any of it. They just kept dancing around his ship, their movements beautiful, but impossible to understand. Then Minho had an idea that changed everything. Instead of using his ship's communication equipment, he started using the shuttle's external lights to copy the dancers' movements. When one of them made a flowing gesture with their arm, Minho created the same pattern using colored lights on his hull. When they spun in circles, he made his lights spin too. The response was incredible. The moment Minho started copying their dance with light patterns, all the void dancers stopped moving. Then they began to glow brighter, and sounds started coming through his communication system. But these weren't the terrifying sounds that drove other species insane. To Minho's human ears, they sounded like the most beautiful music he had ever heard. Soman, are you getting this? Minho called back to the research ship. They're responding. I think their whole language is based on movement and light patterns, not words. Back on the Celestial Dawn, Soman was recording everything while monitoring the unconscious alien crew members. The medical scanners show that the sleeping aliens are having nightmares even from this distance, she reported. But your brain activity looks normal. Actually, it looks better than normal. It's like their communication is somehow good for human minds. Working together, Minho and Soman spent the next several hours learning to translate the void dancers' language. It was unlike anything in galactic records. The dancers communicated through combinations of light, sound, and movement that created meaning in ways no other species had ever developed. Each gesture told part of a story, and the sounds added emotional context. The lead dancer, who seemed to be the oldest and most complex of the group, came closer to Minho's shuttle. Through careful translation, Minho learned that her name meant something like harmony of ending stars. She had been alive for thousands of years, watching over the galaxy since before most current civilizations even existed. As their communication improved, Harmony of Ending Stars began to share information that shocked Minho to his core. The void dancers weren't the monsters that every species feared. They were guardians who had been protecting the galaxy for millennia from something much worse. For so long we have tried to warn the young races, her message translated through patterns of light and vibration. But when we approach, their minds break. They see us as death and madness. We did not understand why until now. What have you been trying to warn us about? Minho asked through his light patterns. The answer made his blood run cold. Harmony of Ending Stars showed him images through the light patterns, pictures that formed directly in his mind. He saw vast regions of space that were completely empty, not just of stars and planets, but of everything. These weren't natural, empty spaces. They were places where something had eaten reality itself. The Devourers come from the space between galaxies, she explained. They consume not just matter and energy, but existence itself. Everything they touch simply stops being. We have fought them at the edges of this galaxy for thousands of your years, but we grow fewer while they grow stronger. Minho felt sick, as he understood what this meant. While the galaxy's civilizations had been afraid of the Void Dancers, these beautiful beings had been fighting a war to protect everyone. They had been dying to keep something infinitely worse from reaching inhabited worlds. Why can humans understand you when other species can't? Minho asked. Your minds are young and flexible, Harmony of Ending Stars replied. The older races have rigid thought patterns that cannot bend without breaking. But human thoughts flow, like water. You can adapt to our form of communication without losing yourselves. This was the breakthrough the galaxy needed, but Minho knew it wouldn't be easy to convince anyone. He began transmitting his findings back to Galactic Command, carefully documenting everything he had learned. But the response was exactly what he expected. Admiral Taehyun Cho of the Galactic Defense Force was the first to reply, and his message was full of anger and disbelief. Park, you've been exposed to Void Dancer influence for too long. These are clearly delusions caused by their psychic manipulation. Human arrogance is making you believe you've accomplished something that the galaxy's greatest minds couldn't do for thousands of years. Other messages followed from various officials and scientists. Most dismissed his findings as impossible. Some accused him of being driven insane by the dancers. A few even suggested that this was all an elaborate trap, and that the Void Dancers were using humans as tools to infiltrate galactic civilization. But Sumin supported him completely. Minho, I've been monitoring everything from here. Your brain scans are perfect. You're not insane and you're not being controlled. These beings really are trying to help us. The problem is that no one will believe us until it's too late, Minho replied. How do we convince the galaxy that their greatest fear is actually their greatest protection? Harmony of Ending Stars sensed his frustration and communicated something that gave him hope. Other humans will come. Your species will learn to bridge the gap between us and the young races, but we must act quickly. The Devourers have found new paths through the void. They will arrive soon. Minho realized that everything depended on what happened next. Humanity had become the key to saving the galaxy. But first they had to convince everyone else that the monsters they feared were actually the heroes they needed. The galaxy's attitude toward Minho's discoveries changed overnight when the first reports came in from the Outer Rim territories. Captain Ji-Young Kim was the one who brought him the devastating news as he worked in his laboratory aboard the Celestial Dawn. Minho, you need to see this immediately, she said, her face pale with shock. The Kepler colony has gone completely silent. No distress signals, no final transmissions, nothing. It's like they just stopped existing. At first, everyone thought it might be a communication failure or a natural disaster. The Kepler colony was home to over 50 million beings from a dozen different species. It was impossible for something that large to simply disappear. But when the rescue fleets arrived at the colony's location, they found something that made no sense. There was nothing there. Not ruins, not debris, not even empty space where the colony used to be. There was simply a void that hurt to look at, directly. The rescue ship captains reported that their sensors couldn't even process what they were seeing. It was like reality itself had been eaten away, leaving behind a hole in the universe. This is exactly what Harmony of Ending Stars warned us about, Minho told the emergency meeting of galactic officials. The Devourers don't destroy things. They consume existence itself. But even with this proof, many officials still refused to believe that the Void Dancers were trying to help. Admiral Taehyun Cho insisted that the dancers had somehow caused the disappearance as part of an elaborate plan to make the galaxy dependent on them. Then more colonies started vanishing. The Andromeda mining station, with its population of 20 million workers, simply ceased to exist overnight. The tourist world of Celestial Gardens, famous for its floating cities and crystal waterfalls, became another void in space that no one could understand. The pattern became clear as more reports arrived. The disappearances were moving inward from the galaxy's edge, heading toward the more populated central systems. Whatever was causing this was making its way toward the heart of galactic civilization, consuming everything in its path. Panic spread across the galaxy as military fleets were sent to investigate and protect the threatened worlds. But their weapons were completely useless. Energy beams passed through the void spaces without having any effect. Nuclear missiles simply vanished when they entered the consumed areas. It was like trying to fight nothingness itself. That's when the Void Dancers appeared in large numbers for the first time in recorded history. Hundreds of their crystal ships emerged from the deep spaces between stars, moving to intercept the advancing void zones. Through Minho's translation, Harmony of Ending Stars explained what was happening. The Devourers have broken through our outer defenses, she communicated through patterns of light and sound. They are beings of pure entropy, existing partially outside your reality. They feed on existence itself, growing stronger with each world they consume. The first direct battle between Void Dancers and Devourers took place near the Centauri system, and it was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. The Devourers appeared as shifting masses of absolute darkness that seemed to bend space around them. They moved through dimensions that normal beings couldn't even perceive. The Void Dancers fought back by literally reshaping reality around the Devourers, creating barriers of twisted space-time that the entropy beings couldn't easily consume. But the battle was clearly going badly for the Dancers. There were too few of them, and they had been weakened by thousands of years of fighting this enemy alone. We cannot win this battle by ourselves, Harmony of Ending Stars told Minho after the failed defense of Centauri. We need the young races to fight alongside us, but they cannot coordinate with us directly. Their minds cannot handle our form of combat. This led to Minho's desperate proposal at the Emergency Galactic Council meeting. Representatives from hundreds of species had gathered to discuss how to face this unprecedented threat. Most of their military strategies were useless against an enemy that existed partially outside normal reality. The solution is humans, Minho explained to the crowded council chamber, with Somin helping to translate his words into the various alien languages. We can work with the Void Dancers without losing our sanity. We can serve as coordinators between their reality warping abilities and your conventional military forces. Fleet Commander Hyejin Nam, one of the highest-ranking humans in galactic service, stood up from her seat. She was a veteran of several interstellar conflicts and commanded respect even among the older alien species, but her expression showed deep concern about Minho's proposal. Dr. Park, you're asking us to bet the survival of our entire galaxy on a species that's been part of galactic civilization for less than 50 years, she said. You want us to trust beings that every race in the galaxy has feared for millennia, coordinated by humans who have never fought a war like this. I'm asking you to trust that sometimes the things we fear most are exactly what we need most, Minho replied. The Void Dancers have been protecting us for thousands of years while we called them monsters. Now they need our help to save everyone. The debate that followed was intense and emotional. Some species representatives argued that working with the Void Dancers was too dangerous. Others insisted that humanity was too inexperienced to handle such responsibility. But as more reports came in of worlds being consumed by the advancing Devourers, it became clear that conventional approaches weren't working. The final vote was close, but it passed. The galaxy would attempt the first joint military operation between conventional forces and the Void Dancers, with human crews serving as coordinators. It was a desperate gamble, but it was the only hope they had left. Minho felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. The fate of billions of lives now depended on whether humans could successfully bridge the gap between two completely different forms of existence. The final battle for the galaxy was about to begin. The Nexus system had always been the beating heart of galactic civilization. Millions of ships passed through its space lanes every day, carrying trade goods, passengers, and information between thousands of different worlds. The massive space stations that orbited the system's central star were home to over 1 billion beings from hundreds of species. Now, it was all disappearing. Minho watched from the bridge of the Void Dancer flagship as entire space stations simply ceased to exist. The Devourers had reached the galaxy's most important system, and they were consuming it piece by piece. Each time another station vanished, the void left behind grew larger and more painful to observe. This is our final chance, harmony of ending, stars communicated to him through their shared mental connection. If the nexus falls completely, the Devourers will have enough consumed reality to spread throughout the galaxy faster than we can follow them. Minho felt strange being inside a Void Dancer ship. The walls around him seemed to be made of living crystal that responded to his thoughts and emotions. When he felt nervous, the walls glowed with calming blue light. When he focused on the battle ahead, they showed him tactical information in patterns of color and movement. But the strangest part was the mental connection he shared with Harmony of Ending Stars. Part of his consciousness was merged with hers, allowing him to experience reality the way Void Dancers did. Through her perception, he could see the Devourers clearly for the first time. They were terrifying beyond description. The Devourers existed partially outside normal space-time, appearing as shifting masses of absolute nothingness that moved through dimensions humans couldn't even imagine. They consumed everything they touched, not just destroying it but making it cease to ever have existed at all. Around him, the combined fleet was taking formation for the most complex military operation in galactic history. Over 1,000 ships, from dozens of different species, were coordinating with hundreds of Void Dancer vessels. But the key to making it work was the human crews scattered throughout the fleet. Minho, we're getting reports from all sectors. Somin's voice came through the quantum communication system from her position aboard a human command ship. The alien crews are staying conscious now that they have human coordinators to translate for them. This is actually working. The battle began when the Devourers noticed the approaching fleet. They moved toward the ships like a wave of nothingness, reality bending and twisting around them as they advanced. Conventional weapons fired by the alien ships passed harmlessly through them, just as everyone had expected. But then the Void Dancers began their attack, and Minho witnessed something that took his breath away. The Dancers didn't fight like any military force he had ever seen. Instead of using weapons, they used their bodies and minds to reshape reality itself. They moved in perfect coordination, their gestures creating patterns in space-time that forced the Devourers back into normal dimensions where they could be harmed. Through his connection with Harmony of Ending Stars, Minho experienced the battle from a dancer's perspective. He watched as they wove new laws of physics around the Devourers, creating pockets of space where entropy couldn't exist. They painted barriers of pure mathematics across the void, using equations that described reality in ways no other species had ever discovered. Each movement was both a weapon and a work of art. When a group of dancers spun together in a complex pattern, they created a whirlpool in space-time that pulled Devourers away from the space stations they were consuming. When they extended their arms in flowing gestures, reality bent around them like water, protecting the fleeing civilian ships. Human coordination teams report successful integration with dancer formations. Came another report from Somin. The alien crews can fight effectively now that they understand what the dancers are doing through human translation. The tide of battle turned as more human-coordinated ships joined the fight. Human crews could communicate with both the Void Dancers and the conventional forces, allowing them to coordinate attacks that used both reality warping and traditional weapons. The Devourers, who had never faced such organized resistance, began to retreat, but the most beautiful moment came near the end of the battle. As the last of the Devourers fled back into the void between dimensions, the Void Dancers began what Harmony of Ending Stars called the Song of Victory. Hundreds of dancers moved together in a dance that literally rewrote the damaged areas of space-time, healing the wounds left by the Devourers' consumption. Where empty voids had existed, new stars began to form. The twisted areas of space straightened themselves out, and reality returned to normal. It was like watching the universe heal itself through the power of coordinated beauty. The Devourers are retreating to extra-dimensional space, Somin reported, her voice filled with amazement. Long-range sensors show them moving back toward the space between galaxies. We've actually won. As the immediate danger passed, Minho realized that humanity had gained something more valuable than just victory. They had become the bridge between two completely different forms of existence. Humans were the only species that could work with the Void Dancers without losing their sanity, making them essential to the galaxy's defense. Months later, Minho stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt Celestial Dawn, which had been converted into the first human dancer diplomatic vessel. Through the windows, he watched a group of void dancers performing their evening meditation, a dance that created new constellations in the sky just for the beauty of it. Captain Ji-Young Kim joined him at the window, no longer afraid of the beings she had once considered monsters. "They really are beautiful," she said quietly, watching the patterns of light flow across the stars. "They always were," Minho replied, thinking back to that first day when he had seen their signals on the ship's display. "We just had to learn how to see past our fear." The galaxy was safe, at least for now, and humanity had found its place among the stars not as conquerors or explorers, but as translators of beauty that others could not understand. Sometimes the most important discoveries came not from being the strongest or the smartest, but from being brave enough to see wonder where others saw only terror.